So today we're going to talk about solutions for procrastination based on everything that we've been learning. But I want you to remember to stay tuned into our student resources page on our website, on our Facebook, on our YouTube channel. We're going to have new solutions being posted, new ideas that are more than open for your suggestions and potential contributions. Also, I need to preface these are just a few solutions related to restructuring that reward scale that we talked about in the previous episode. But what is most effective for one student may not be as effective for another. So thankfully, at The Ohio State University, we offer one-on-one sessions in which you can meet with someone who's taken classes on learning strategies and can work with you toward designing solutions specific to your needs. Scheduling one of these appointments is just a few clicks away from our homepage, so I encourage anyone serious about becoming excellent managers of their time to consider that resource. Alright, so before we jump into the solutions, I just want to recap some of the main points these solutions are based on. Remember from episode 1, we concluded that through the story of Elliot that eradicating emotions from decision making is inefficient because the emotional mind is always a factor, and in fact it's a necessary factor. He wasn't able to make decisions well without that emotional piece, and it's that emotional piece which helps us to finalize our opinions and follow through. We also discovered that willpower is exhaustible and is under continual stress throughout the day as we make decisions, from just waking ourselves up to cooking breakfast to even simply being patient with those around us. So one effective strategy is to utilize willpower during planning to customize the number of future decisions that will be required to make. Let me explain. Every time we have to make a decision is another opportunity for the distraction to win out or our willpower to become fatigued. We want to increase the number of decisions necessary to engage in a distraction while decreasing the number of decisions necessary to engage in the intention. Some of what we mean by decisions can be looked at as a customization of accessibility and convenience. Because we underrate the weight of future temptations, we don't consider how important something like accessibility can be. Sources of distractions are masters of accessibility. Usually it's just a click and a password is all it takes typically to get into a world of entertainment online. At times, it can be even simpler than that. Now, so consider how unappealing some of those distractions would be if before getting online, you had to take the bus down to a street corner where you received a password to a vault on the other side of town that would open up a ticket which would give 10 minutes of internet access at the central library, and only then could you access Facebook. Dare I say, the internet would just cease to be used altogether. The temptation wouldn't be as strong because of both the increased effort and the more distant reward. Now, we often don't consider that the accessibility of distraction is something we can account for in planning. We say things like, oh yeah, definitely I'll study that day, or I've got those 5 hours on Saturday, but we don't think about the fact that when we wake up on Saturday, we're going to have to find our books, pack our bags, get dressed, decide where to study, get ourselves there, have made ourselves food, etc. All these decisions will have to have been made, whereas to be distracted might be as simple as just not getting out of bed. Part of the tragedy is that we often don't see decision point strategies as wise, but rather as weak. We live with the lie that simply believing that we should do something is all the motivation that should be required. But depending on your exhaustion level, as we said before, with willpower and what else you've had to do, just knowing that you should do something is often not enough. We all know that smoking is something we shouldn't do, that sleep is something we should get, that healthy eating is something we should start. Clearly, it isn't as simple as just knowing that we should, and that's something we simply have to come to the truth of. The truth is that people who engage in these strategies, they may be at times seen as lacking willpower because they're fortifying the willpower with some other source, but in fact, they're simply being prudent, and they're utilizing the willpower while they have it to not ignore a large segment of how they're motivated when the time to decide comes around. They're doing what's necessary to succeed. So consider the following options. Installing a program that limits internet use. Let's face it, the internet is a never-ending cookie jar of stuff more interesting to do than study. Programs like these are smart, and I've seen them increase efficiency time and again. Just changing your location to reduce distractions. It reduces the number of times you have to decide to resist that distraction. Perhaps the most common is the old wait. Why am I studying in the dorm again when I know I work better in the library? If you're not at the dorm, you don't have to make the extra decision not to talk to your flatmates, reducing the number of decisions between you and your plan. Perhaps the most drastic idea would be the old live without a phone technique. This is for those of you who with no friends for 4 Facebooks, those who text, Twitter, and Instagram until the sun comes up. Truthfully, I think a lot of us could benefit from a little phone-free time, and you'd be amazed the power you give yourself when you make these minor adjustments. I've met people who made the library a phone-free zone, and I've met people who bought a Kindle instead of a tablet just so that the only thing they'd be able to do was read on it. These are wise decisions, not weak ones. Though, of course, ways to change the number of decision points are not always this drastic. Think of the example between either coming home to work on an assignment or to watch your favorite TV show. To make the distraction less appealing, we could have planned not to go home at all, but to finish the assignment in the library before ever leaving school. Even if you remember that the show is coming on while in the library, think about how many more decisions it takes to watch the show instead of work if you're in the library. Now, instead of just turning on the TV and not doing work, you'd have to head home and make several other decisions first. Whereas to do the assignment, you just have to stay put and continue working. In our example of exercise or shopping, simply not seeing the Macy's catalog would have been enough not to present the decision between those two options. This is why environment is so important. It alters the presentation of a distraction, which creates another choice between either working or remaining distracted. It's about altering the accessibility of distraction. What about work? How can we make work more accessible? The goal is not just to decrease the accessibility of those distractions, but to increase the accessibility of work. And we oftentimes don't think about these options. Ohio State just changed to semesters. And while this should have given people a little more breathing room with assignments, it's having the opposite effect. And most students are reporting a greater sense of busyness. What was dealing with 3 classes is now dealing with 5. Consequently, it's never been more necessary to correctly prioritize work. Think about the last time you sat down to do your work. Before doing anything at all, you'll have to potentially weed through a pile of assignments and due dates, making a myriad of decisions about what to prioritize and which material to collect before beginning work is even an option. During planning, we reduce the load on our willpower during the moment of deciding between intention and distraction, simply by being specific in the nature of what we plan to do. So deciding on which projects and exactly what page numbers to read before getting to the library will increase your likelihood of staying focused. Another common factor that increases the decisions you have to make when you work is having to gather the materials. It seems obvious, but just having to go back to the dorm before the library to gather materials is several more opportunities to encounter distraction. So when you make the plan to work, include packing the necessary materials in your preparation for that work. If you don't want to eat out, make the lunch the night before. If you want to go to the gym, pack your gym bag the night before. For many of us, just getting to the library where distractions are limited is difficult. The thing to do is to plan on going to the library at times when you would be walking right by it anyway. So then it's not a decision between gathering your books, choosing a library, getting your outdoor clothes ready, etc., but simply of turning left and opening a door. The other simplification this begins to create of your decision to work is habit formation. When we think about the scenario in which one would either work on the assignment that was given in class or wind up watching their favorite TV show, along with making the distraction less accessible through working on the assignment in the library, we increase our odds of ending up in the library rather than home if it's both on the way home as well as a formed habit. That's why it can be helpful to choose to consistently attend the library when walking right by it. The increased level of convenience will make it easier to do the first several times when you're fighting the habit to just leave campus. Consequently, it will begin forming a habit that makes it easier to do, so on and so forth. Think of our exercise example. Along with making Macy's less interesting, by not having seen the catalog in the first place, We can make working out more accessible by not having to worry about getting ready to, so deciding to wear gym clothes or have them with you rather than to go home to get ready first. The bottom line is that all these small decisions play into the formula of whether we conclude on sticking to the plan or engaging in unwanted delay. Manipulating even these seemingly minor variables will have large effects. It's about planning to make doing easier and more accessible rather than just planning to do. Join us in part 2 of this episode where we'll explore more solutions for combating procrastination.